What's up, guys? Today I figured I would show you how to float a 6-screw vintage Trem and just basically tell you how to set this up. So I did a video probably 2 years ago with my Ibanez, and I watched a guy, Food Rower or whatever his name was, and I came up with a much easier way. So before we get to floating the Trem, let's go over guitar setup. First thing you're going to want to do is release all the tension on the strings. Then you're going to cut the strings off. Then these screws over here, you're going to tighten them down until the bridge sits and it's decked on the body. And you don't want to over tighten these. You just want to snug them down that, it's not going to raise up. If we turn the guitar over, you can see we have springs here. Now, I know a lot of people like to run their springs, on an angle, which I don't. I run them all parallel. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to back these two screws out. Right now we got about 3/8 of an inch from the, back of the body to the back of the plate. I usually put that out to about, say, 5/8, even 3/4 of an inch. And these screws are pretty long, so that gives me leeway to, crank them in when I'm done. And the other things I like to do is go over all the screws. Make sure they're tight. Don't over tighten them or you're going to strip them. And the same thing with the plate, just go over them, make sure everything's snug. You already snugged these down, so you don't got to worry about them. Make sure, this is snug. These, make sure, you take a socket and snug that up. Your straps, your mounts, you want to snug them up. And then up here on your tuners, take a socket or wrench. Don't use a pair of pliers or anything. You're going to screw them up. Make sure they're snug, not tight. The other thing is, some of these tuners, they'll have screws in them. Just make sure they're snug. After you make sure everything is snug, what you're going to do then is polish your frets up. So what I like to do is take a piece of 1200 sandpaper, run it over it, and then, I go up to 2,000-3,000 grit and, polish that up. Or you can use one of those green like scrubby things and go over it that way. Then I lemon oil the board and leave it sit for a minute and wipe all the excess off. Then I take some Meguiar's scratch remover and I polish everything up, including the plastic. Clean all of that. I remove the knobs, I clean all of them. And if there's grime around here, I'll use that little green scrubby that you get. Just clean all that shit up, headstock and everything. Once you get that done, and clean your nut out too, use a toothbrush or something, clean that out. Then it's time to restring. So you got all the strings, ready to go. You start with the low 6 string, that's what I like to do. I line the tuning peg hole up that they're all facing the way they need to face. I use the 3-finger method, and depending on how big your fingers are, I take my ring finger, put it on the center of the post, 3 fingers together, and then I take the wire, the string, and I put it here, and what I'll do is I'll bend a 90 in it this way, 3 fingers past, or 2.5 in my case. I'll put the string through the tuning peg, and then I'll bend it this way. Then hold it down and make sure to, when you're winding it, you want that wire to go under where you put that string through. If you do it this way on each peg, you'll end up with 3 wraps on each one. So after that, you're going to tune the pitch. And this is not going to float yet. We don't want it floating at this point. We take a capo, stick it over the first fret, And then we'll take a feeler gauge here, 10/1000ths I like to use. On the low E string, you're going to press down on the last fret, and then up here on the 8th fret, you're going to take that feeler gauge, and all you're going to do is just kind of put that underneath, holding this down. I can't do it because I don't have enough hands. I'm not shooting this anyway. So anyway, you're going to put that under. What you're looking for is that 10/1000ths. You don't want to see this string move up, because that means you got too much of a bow that goes this way, and you don't want too much, like say I was holding that down. You don't have enough back bow. So then what we would do is come over here to the truss rod, and you would tighten. So looking at the headstock, you would righty-tighty. That's going to bring your neck down, and that's going to reduce the amount of string space that you have from underneath the string to that 8th fret. Now, if the string, or if you're putting this feeler gauge under there and it's lifting it, you're going to want to turn it to the left. And most guitars today, even the cheaper ones, have two-way truss rods in them. So if you're turning it to the left and you feel it get loose, keep turning it, and you should, within, you know, a quarter turn, a little bit more, feel some tension going the other way, and it will shift the neck. So after you have that 10/1000ths set, that you just put this feeler, it's not a feeler gauge, but you feel it, and you don't see that string raise, you don't see a gap, but you feel the slightest drag, you're good. You remove that capo on that 1st fret, and then what I like to do is at this point set the string height. So yes, you can use radius gauges, and I do have some radius gauges, but what I prefer to do is just take a simple rule. At the 12th fret, you would just measure till you get 2/32 on the high E, 2/32 on the B, and then I flip the rule around for the G and the D, and I want 5/64 there and there. Then I flip it around, and on the A, I want 3/32, and on the low E, 3/32. Now I got, and the way to do that, which I should mention, is you have these little Allen type screws. So if we take a look at it this way, when you tighten these in, it's going to raise it. When you back them out, it's going to lower it. Keep these flush. I see a lot of people, and you go to music stores and they're sitting this way or this way, they're not flush. So that's what you're looking for, is to do each one. Take your time, do it right, and after you get your string height, and that will give you the radius on your fretboard as well. So the strings are going to follow the radius of your fretboard. The next thing, after you have your string height, what you're going to do is set the intonation. You'll hold down on the 12th fret on each string. So if you're sharp, you're going to turn these screws clockwise, and you're going to bring that backward. And that's going to pull it sharp. So don't go too far. Go maybe a step at a time, maybe 2 turns, 2.5 turns, and then you're going to have to retune your string, and then you would, after you set the high E, say we're working on the high E, you would pick it open, your tuner would read E. Then you're going to hold it at the 12th fret, pick it again, and you're going to keep doing that until your tuner reads the same, E. Because everything from the 12th fret down is the same as the 1st fret to that 12th fret. So after you set the, if it's flat, then you're going to back this screw off. You're going to turn it counterclockwise, tune back to pitch, and then again, same process. Pick it open, fret the 12th fret, and it's a back and forth thing. Do all 6 strings. Once you got it intonated and all the strings are picked open at E, and then when you pick across the 12th fret and, you know, E, A, D, G, B, E, then you're good with that. The next thing I like to do is use the standard specs. So what we'll do is, again, we'll hold down on the last fret, and then we'll measure from, and let's see where we at. All right, so the 64ths. On the high E side, you would place the roll, and it's going to be 3/64ths on each of your pickups. So no matter if you have single coil or humbucker, you're holding down on this last fret, you're measuring until you get 3/64ths on the high E. On the low E, same deal. You're going to hold down there, but you're looking for 5/64ths. That's going to give you a good starting point on your pickups to see what you like, you know, if they got to go up or down. The higher you go, the stronger the magnet pull. The lower you go, you know, not the, you know, strongest magnet pull. So that's all preference, and I'm not going to go into that any further. So at this point, now we're ready to float the trem. What you're going to do is you're going to take your screwdriver and you're just going to back each screw off 1/8 of a turn. And what you're looking for is just ever so slight space. Let me get something in here. Between the bottom of the screw here and the bridge itself. So you just want a tiny bit of space there. If I had to say, I would say a 32nd on each screw if you're looking for a number. So maybe a 32nd, that's what you're looking for. Now, what you're going to do, we're going to flip the guitar over. And in between this part here, the body, and your trem block, you're going to take some paper and you're going to stuff it down in between the spring. Just enough that when we measure this, and you want to kind of be at the edge of it, you're going to put the rule on the body and then next to that. You don't have to be precise, but get in the ballpark of about 2/32. So for 10s, the magic number is 3/32. You want 3/32 of space from the body to the bottom of this bridge. For 9s, you want 2/32. So if you're setting up 9s, set it for about maybe with the paper that is jammed in between there, maybe about, you know, a 32nd, little over a 32nd. For 10s, 2/32. Now your guitar is going to be out of tune, but you know, we have that little bit of space there. What you're going to do is you're going to tune your guitar. And actually, let me back up before we go any further. Before you even start this, I forgot. Stretch your strings. Keep stretching them, you know, do each one. I have a string stretcher. You get them on Amazon. I think they're like 15 bucks, 14 bucks, something like that. Make sure your strings are stretched. And then once they're stretched, don't overstretch them, but make sure they are. Then proceed to this part. When you have that paper jammed in there and you have roughly about where you want, tune all your strings to standard tuning. After you have them in standard tuning, what we're going to do is check this measurement again. So if this, like for example, this bridge with 10s on it, it made it rise up to 5/32. So then what we do is we'll turn these screws in. So, you know, you're going to crank them in. And I like to keep this plate, you know, parallel with the body. So you're going to turn them in. That's going to bring the bridge here down. Then you're going to have to retune it. And you're going to go back and forth until you get, you know, 3/32 for 10s or 2/32 for 9s. That is the most simplest way I can explain. And then when you, you know, pull back on the whammy bar, you have that step and a half, the whole step, and then a half step. And I mean, I've seen other videos out there where they got their tailpiece way, way up there. And I mean, 5/32, that's high. So that's going to wrap this video up on how to float a trem and go over guitar setup. Guitar setup, you know, it's the way I set every single guitar I have that, you know, needs to be done. The other thing, before I forget, is you got to address the nut sometimes. So you hold down on the 3rd fret, and then you'll take those feeler gauges and you'll put it under here. So 18 to 22 thousandths is kind of the ballpark. It depends on what you want. Just remember, I have a video on how to make nut files. If you don't know what you're doing, I would not mess with the nut. You know, you can really jack stuff up if you don't know what you're doing. So you should have some space between each one when you're holding down here. And on the low E, you can kind of hear it. It's not much, but it's enough. So anyway, that's going to wrap this video up.